Hoofle's Cat. First off, thank you all for the very, very nice messages about me having to work and Kitty having to work on Monday night after the Vannon attacks in Toronto this Monday. I appreciate that a lot. I'm going to talk about why some people think this sort of a thing is fake and the implications of that in a different video. Frankly, I'm quite upset about that. I've been trying to delete them off the little video I put up because I have no time for this. It's very, very hurtful to do that. When I do the fake video, if people want to tell me why it's fake, that's fine, but I'm going to discuss that in depth. But the thing is, I wanted to just do a quick video that actually talks about what happened on Monday night. Just briefly, I have to be careful what I say, etc., etc., but just to give you some input into it. And then I want to do another video talking about what I think are very important prepping lessons for everybody from the incident that I went through. So the first thing was that the provincial minor code orange was alerted round about 2:20 on the Monday afternoon. So I knew I was working nights that night and Kitty was working nights that night, so we weren't actually called in. The protocol would be to call us in if we weren't working, but we're scheduled to work anyway. So we knew there was major road closures, so we set off early and we got ready as soon as we could. We went to work. On arrival at work, I went into the hospital emergency committee room, and there was like 40 people in there in suits, all going blah, blah, blah. Found a couple of the senior people and decided what we were going to do for the shift. So what I did for the first 6 hours of the shift is I brought in an extra manager in my role to work with patient flow who was staying to continue with bed flow issues inside of the hospital, so I wouldn't have to deal with it. And I spent 6 hours working in the working with and in the Family Incident Support Centre, which is basically an auditorium, and manned with social workers and then with nurses that we brought in to give families who are looking for loved ones a place to go and hopefully be identified. So basically Sunnybrook got 10 patients. 2 died almost straight away down in the emergency department after a failure to resuscitate. That was expected. Our trauma room took in 8 patients. It's designed to take 3. And generally speaking, those patients had all been placed, except for one of them, by the time I rolled through the door at 6:30. So what I also did as part of my role is I do bed flow management during the shift as well. So one of the things is one of the patients that was still in the operating room, we allocate them a bed to go to, made sure the bed was available, and then they needed a higher care bed, so we moved them to that. So that sort of thing was going on for the first 6 hours. So what I was seeing was a lot of distraught visitors and people wanting information, because if they're not identified and you come in through the door and you can give us some ideas that that's the patient there, we can take you up there and you can see that person, you can identify them, and that's great. The problem we had was a large number of visitors were coming in to try and identify loved ones who were missing, and they weren't at our centre or the other 2 places that received smaller numbers of traumas. That meant pretty much that their loved one was lying on the street, dead, and they wouldn't be notified until after the coroner had picked them up. So you can imagine how upset people were. Also during the shift, my co-worker who was scheduled to work with me, this is where I'm kind of annoyed about the fake thing. He lives right where it happened, and he was out walking with his wife, and he walked on a different side of the road than he normally does, which was probably a good idea. So he was actually one of the first people on the scene, and ended up doing CPR, trying to resuscitate people whose heart stopped on 2 of the people at the scene. Unsuccessfully, and he knew it'd be unsuccessfully because he's a trauma nurse. His background the same as me, but he tried. And then he came to work. And he came to work because he felt he was needed. And we could have done without him, and we tried to encourage him not to come to work, but much like I would have done, he wanted to come in, he came in, and it was quite bad. So we kind of try to keep him away from the actual visitors and the actual injury patients, because it's not good for you to go straight back into that immediately. Seeing the day shift RNs leave emerge in the ICU, very senior staff that I know really well for over a decade or more, hugging and crying each other, really shook up by this event, was quite personally hard to take. And it was extremely busy throughout the shift, so that's what I was doing. What Kitty was doing was running the Sunnybrook Trauma ICU, the main ICU, as the charge nurse, and she had dramatically more patients because we used the recovery room area and expanded, and she had dramatically more visitor issues and policing issues. So with me and my co-worker and Kitty, what we were doing during the shift was liaising with the homicide detectives to get things like dental records taken, dental imprints taken, and photographs and fingerprints, and also at the same time bringing people in to try and identify the unidentified we had, some of which are still unidentified. And as you see from the list that I'll put up of the patients who have been identified from this who died, Toronto is a very multicultural city, so a lot of non-Canadians, a lot of visitors were also killed in this incident, which is very unfortunate. And these things do happen, and I can understand why there's a desire to claim fake for stuff like this, but it really wasn't faked, and that's all I can say. You can't fake 5 multiple ventilated trauma patients with missing limbs and spinal cord injuries and head injuries from a motor vehicle accident that easily. And they were strewn all the way down, about 2 kilometres down from Finch, almost to the 401. There was like basically 3 separate blocks where it crossed and hit, gone back on the road, crossed and hit, and gone back on the road. And I'm going to talk in a separate video about prepping issues, because I think there's a lot of people saying stuff about this type of an incident, about what you should and shouldn't do, that may not actually be reflecting reality. So again, thank you all very, very much. It really, really shook me up, and it was quite bad. It is the worst code orange we've actually experienced in Sunnybrook, but it's what we're paid to do, and we did it. I also met the Premier, Kathleen Wynne, who's a lot shorter than she looks in real life, and she was really upset. And I also met the Mayor, and he was upset as well. I can kind of understand why they were upset, because when they met me, I was going through photographs to try and identify with a co-worker who we were trying to identify next, who was unidentified, so the pictures were pretty bad, and also the list of injuries and people affected was on the board as well. But it was nice that they came and talked to us. There was many, at that time, there was many people around. So yeah, what happened was by around about midnight, the incident command functions devolved to me with backup at home. So that was that. The actual response was remarkable. Sunnybrook, like most Canadian hospitals, has been under a lot of pressure recently. We were grossly over-patiented when this incident started. ICU and the hospital occupancy was about 111%, which means that there's 11% more patients who need beds than we have beds. So that was a huge thing. We did boot people out quite quickly to other hospitals and move people into areas we don't normally would use. And the response was absolutely amazing. It was quite reassuring how fast and good the response was. So that's basically an update on what happened when I worked night that night. I also had to get food and water for people and all that sort of stuff at 2 in the morning. So, like, those mechanical stuff is really, really important. Somebody has to do it. And arranging bed cleaning and places for people to sleep who've been there since the incident broke out and they've been working all day. All of those mechanical stuff is part of my job, but it also involves getting police warrants served and coroner's warrants served and all that sort of stuff, and dealing with the families and the staff who were actually quite upset as well. All right. Thanks a lot, and I really do appreciate everybody's thoughts, and I spent them to Kitty, and she's feeling fine, and she's now off to yoga. The worst patient she had that night, the Monday night, actually wasn't involved in this issue at all. It was a separate issue in terms of acuity. And that, I think, is one of the interesting things. It wasn't the types of injuries we got. We're quite used to multiple accident victims at Sunnybrook. It was the fact that 10 hit the place at the same time. That's unprecedented. We have had 5 or 6 within a half-an-hour period before, but that's usually gang-related. But this was pretty dramatic. Anyway, hug and kiss the loved ones, and enjoy yourselves. Au revoir.